In the deepest depths of Stirling University lies a man who ponders important questions. Not questions like, what's the meaning of life, or why are we here? But questions that center over one concept. How do I scare my audience? Tonight, he will answer that question, reading tales that are so utterly horrifying they may leave you weak at the knees. Welcome to the Spook Zone.
Merry 24-hour show, baby. I'm back with the Spook Zone. It's a show that I do, and I read you horror stories, and it's utterly spooktacular. Whoa, I'm just getting the lights all red and horrifying. Let me just get that red in there. Can I get it red? Yes! Very scary in here. It's perfect. It's wonderful. And, yeah, I'm going to be reading you some scary stories tonight. A couple I've never read before. Well, one I have read before. I read it a couple days ago, and I'm very keen to give you all a little reading of this. And, yeah, I hope you all are doing well. It's been a long time since I've done this. About a year or two now, and I'm very glad to be back because doing this show is extremely, extremely enjoyable, and I am. Well, hello, Ed.
You have company.
You do have company. Hello, welcome. I'm about to read some scary stories on air. You want to join?
Okay, I don't really like scary stuff.
So well, just
probably not me.
so just sit tight and enjoy then. Just or
like creepypastas.
oh yeah. Internet crap. It's great. Let's get over here. Where is the one I was looking to last time? There it is. Perfect. So I'm going to read this, and it's going to be a fun time. And yeah.
Are we sure?
Oh, I've read it before. It's an enjoyable story. But yeah, prepare to be scared, prepare to be spooked, prepare to be, all of that. Yeah. Here we go. This story is called Charles Bonnet Syndrome. It's by S.P. Hickey, and yeah, you can just look that up online and you'll be able to find the story. Yeah, here we go. I suffer from a condition called Charles Bonnet Syndrome, or visual release hallucinations if you want to get more technical. It's a condition that's far more common than you might realize. It's estimated that as many as half of people with gradual loss of vision will experience one or more bouts in their lifetime. Yet I'm willing to bet most of you have never heard of it. The reason is because most sufferers are scared to tell anybody what we experience. I know I was. I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Andrew. I'm 26. And 2 years ago, I woke up with awful blurred vision. Every single edge and detail was clouded, as if somebody had smeared Vaseline on a camera lens. It never got better. I was scared then, and I got over to Dr. Harper's surgery as fast as I could, suddenly needing to take a cab rather than climbing the car I'd driven without incident ever since I'd bought it 3 years prior. The doctor did some tests and asked me some questions. Have you been thirstier lately? How often do you urinate? How would you describe your tiredness levels? And then gave me the diagnosis that changed my life forever. Diabetes, type 1. He explained that I would need to take insulin shots with every meal, and that eating the wrong foods without monitoring my blood sugar could see me drop into a coma, or worse. And then he got to my eyes. Andrew, your diabetes has resulted in myelopathy. Do you know what that is? I shook my head dumbly, already reeling with the shock of my diagnosis, and Dr. Harper went on. It's when the diabetes affects the blood vessels at the back of your eye, blocking them and causing them to leak into the macula, which is the central part of your retina that helps you perceive colour and fine detail. When these blood vessels leak into the macula, it can cause significant damage. With a lump in my throat, I asked, okay, so how do we make this better? I couldn't see Harper's face properly when he spoke, but his tone of voice was enough to tell me what I'd been dreading.
I'm sorry, Andrew, he replied gravely. Perhaps if we had caught this a little sooner, we might have had some treatment options available to us, but I'm afraid the damage has been pretty extensive. We can talk about steps to arrest the development of the condition, but I'm afraid it's irreversible. I felt as if my world had come crashing down on me. I was just 24, still at my physical peak. I was active, I was playing basketball and cycling a couple times a week, and now my health, my body, and my sight had been taken from me. The first 6 months were tough. I broke up with my girlfriend, a sweet girl called Holly, who tried to make it work but couldn't because I was so damn angry all the time. I lost my job because if there's one thing an architect needs, it's his eyes. I even fell out with a lot of my friends, making excuses not to meet them until they stopped asking. In truth, it was just jealousy on my part, envy that they got to keep on living while everything I'd ever hoped for had been snatched away. I became reclusive, never leaving my apartment, barely bothering to wash, shave, get dressed each day. I was sure that my life was over, and I stopped even trying to live it. I was an asshole. It took me a long time to realize this, but in the end, it was the nurse assigned to visit me at home, a tall, no-nonsense, experienced woman that was called Lewis, who brought this to my attention. "You're an asshole," she said. What? I gasped, shocked at her language. "So you got diabetes. Do you know how many people do?" she asked. Then, before waiting for my answer, she continued, "Do you think they all hide in their apartments, refusing to get on with their lives? Losing your vision is a terrible thing, and you have my sympathy, but Andrew, it's no excuse to give up." But you don't," I argued, trying to defend myself, but she hadn't finished. "Understand," she growled. "One of the bravest men I know was paralyzed from the neck down when he was just a child, and he hasn't given up. You can do so much more with your life, and you have people that want to help you do that, but you can't even be bothered to shave the ugly fucking beard off, so stop being a crybaby and make a difference." Of course, it didn't happen overnight, and I argued with her. I was furious at her blunt insensitivity, and I told her to leave. I said I'd tell her superiors, but she laughed and told me I wouldn't. "You wouldn't, because you're a smart guy and you've got too much pride for that," she said. "I'll see you next week." That night I shaved. I opened my curtains and I actually looked around. Things were blurry, but when I really looked, I could see the things scattered around my home. The mess I'd let it become. When Lewis came back the following week, the place was tidy. I was clean-shaven, dressed. I'd even attempted to comb my hair. She didn't say anything about it. Didn't mention the argument of the week before, but she took me down for coffee. Down the street. She guided me along the sidewalk to the coffee shop, talking to me, reassuring me. It was daunting, even though it was less than a block away, but I felt so proud when I got there. We talked, me and Lewis. I think I even laughed. Afterwards, she walked me home. Then, when she helped me back inside, she said, "It's nice to meet you at last, Andrew." That day was the beginning of my new life. I moved into a new apartment, a ground floor place, and joined a group of other people with visual impairments. I made friends. I got out every day, even if it was just a short walk, but I made a point of seeing what I could of the world. I bought what I could, but the Sawyers, the old couple that ran the local store, would bring my groceries once a week. Clark's this gruff old coot, and so he refuses to coddle me, but he's told me that he respects me for being like I am, and for maintaining my independence, for not giving up. From a guy like him, that's one of the sweetest things I've ever heard. And things
things were going so well. Then, 1 year ago, it started. I walked into my living room, a mug of coffee in my hand, and I saw a Victorian funeral carriage stood right there on my rug, complete with 2 huge proud horses in full livery adorned with long black plumes in their bridles. They stood completely still, while the driver, a small bearded man in period costume and a top hat, fidgeted with the reins and peered at me, expectantly. Bizarrely, they were far clearer than the usual blurry shapes that I could see. I damn near pissed my pants. I dropped the cup, spilling scalding hot coffee all over my bare feet, and jumping backwards with a cry of pain and alarm. When I returned my attention to the horses and the carriage, they were gone. And at that moment, I worried if I was going mad. Apparently, most of us do, which is understandable. How would you feel if you'd seen that exact same sight in your home? Unless you're like Jack the Ripper, I imagine many of you don't have a coach and horses just lying around. I certainly didn't. Eventually, after much quiet swearing to myself and more than a little self-delusion, I managed to convince myself that I had not seen what I thought I had, and it was merely a very vivid daydream. And this seemed to work, and I got on living, even if I entered that same room a little bit more cautiously in the day that followed. And finally, I forgot about it. 2 weeks later, I saw a giant floating, swirling orange ball in my bathroom, and I damn near pissed myself again. I stood staring at it, this bizarre, rotating, levitating globe that was a little larger than a beach ball, hanging in midair over my tub, open-mouthed, for a full 10 seconds before finally screwing my eyelids tightly closed and whispering myself, "That isn't there. That wasn't there." And after 5 seconds, I opened my eyes again. It wasn't there. I mean, have you ever had a cause to doubt your own sanity? To wonder whether what you perceive is truly there? Or if your mind has betrayed you? Honestly, compared to the loss of vision, the prospect of losing my wits was way more terrifying. I'd fought against adversity and took pride in the fact that I'm not just the survivor, but somebody who's living his own life. How could I do that if I was insane? I barely slept that night, and I remained jumpy for days afterwards. Any sign of movement or any unfamiliar shape would set my pulse racing, which would cause me to doubt whether it was truly there. It was the toughest time I'd ever been through. Worse even than the time I was diagnosed with diabetes. At least when Dr. Harper had told me about diabetes, I had a definite view prognosis. I was given facts by a medical professional. My affliction was physical. It had a name. Most importantly, it had a plan to treatment. And for this was something else. My own mind turned against me. My senses and perception of reality had become twisted and unreliable. It's only when you're in the position that you realize just how terrifying it is. Your senses and the way in which your brain interprets them are your only true defenses against danger. You perceive danger and you avoid it, preventing your body from becoming harmed. But what happens when you can't trust your perception to alert you to the dangers that are truly there? Lois picked up the problem first, noticing my skittish manner. She wondered what was wrong, if I needed to talk about anything. I told her no, I was fine. But I hadn't been sleeping well. The last part was true. I hadn't been able to sleep a wink. Just the very thought of being institutionalized, spending the rest of my days sedated in blue pajamas, a zombie in a white room with only the echoing cries of my fellow inmates to accompany, that terrified me beyond measure. But what was the alternative? Live life as a risk to myself and others? I chose to ignore it. I reasoned that if I was able to function around other people without them realizing what was going on, that was good enough. And a full month passed before the next incident, and I really did think that maybe I'd put this whole mess behind me. With every day, my confidence grew, so that Wednesday morning I'd stepped out onto a sunny street feeling pretty carefree. Each Wednesday, I'd treat myself to a latte down at Joe's, the same coffee shop that I'd visited with Lewis. It was a custom that gave me a great deal of pleasure, one that had seen me forge friendships with other regulars as well as the staff, including Joe himself. And as I made my way down the street, white stick in hand, I glanced about me, taking in the colours and shapes of the world, and I enjoyed the feeling of sun on my face and the sounds of birds singing. It was a good day. Then I saw them. A party of pilgrims, 6 of them, all dressed in settler-era attire, sitting cross-legged on the asphalt. And they didn't even look at me. Instead, they were engaged in heated yet strangely silent conversation. I froze, staring at them, and still they argued, gesticulating furiously at one another. However, I couldn't hear their angry voices, despite the fact that, judging by their ill temperament, they must be screaming at each other. Paralyzed by shock, the white stick fell from my numb fingers, clattering onto the sidewalk. I turned to leave, desperate to flee from the haunting sight of colonists on the road. But I was so panicked, in such a hurry, that I stepped on my cane, and it rolled underfoot, and before I knew it, I pitched over and I tumbled hard onto the ground below. I didn't quite break my fall in time, banging my cheek hard on the floor and skinning my palms. I heard a cry from a passerby, a friendly, concerned woman who reached and rushed to my side. She knelt beside me, helping me up, applying a Kleenex to my throbbing cheek, which she informed me was now bleeding, and I tried to tell her that I was okay. There was nothing to worry about, but this good Samaritan decided on insisting to drive me to Dr. Harper's office to get my injuries looked at. And now that I think back to it, I'm pretty sure that she knew my obvious distress was nothing to do with the fall. At the time, I was embarrassed and angry, but now I realize I do owe her a huge debt of gratitude. Without her intervention, I don't know how much longer this would have gone on before I cracked and ended up in an asylum before breaking down through sheer stress. Andrew, why don't you just tell me what happened? Dr. Harper asked, gently dabbing at my cheek with disinfectant. I explained that I just lost my balance, and that no harm was done, but I think he saw through my feeble protestations and to my underlying agitation, and he didn't press or force the matter. He simply asked what might have caused my clumsiness. And then he asked how I'd been of late. When I'd finished mumbling my way through the most non-committal answer I could mutter, he placed a gentle, reassuring hand on my shoulder. Andrew, he repeated gently, why don't you tell me what happened? I burst into tears. I told him how scared I was, how I'd fought so hard for my independence, and now I knew it would be taken from me. He listened patiently, and then he asked me to tell him why I would ever think that. And I paused then, took a deep breath, and thought about it. This was the point of no return. But really, what other option did I have? So, with tears running down my cheeks, I told Dr. Harper everything. I told him about the horse and carriage, the orange globe, and the pilgrims. I told him how I'd been living each day in fear, and how I was terrified I was losing my mind. And Dr. Harper thought for a while, and then he said, Andrew, I don't think you are losing your mind. The sense of relief at that moment was powerful. It overwhelmed me. It rendered me speechless. You say that even though you've seen these things, you've never heard any noise from them. Have you detected any odors or experienced any other physical sensations, such as touching them? And I shook my head, no. And he patted my shoulder once again. Andrew, have you heard of Charles Bonnet syndrome? He asked. Charles... who? I asked, confused by the sudden, unexpected turn of conversation. Okay, let me explain, Dr. Harper said kindly. Charles Bonnet was a Swiss naturalist who was born in the 1700s. He discovered a curious condition in his elderly grandfather who was nearly completely blind due to cataracts. The old man regularly experienced visual hallucinations, including random patterns and even people and places. Does that sound familiar? Yes, I replied, still confused. Am I suffering from dementia? No, Andrew, not at all, Dr. Harper reassured me. Do you know how perception works? In layman's terms, your eyes take in light via the iris and pupil, which is then processed via the retina and translated into electrical signals which are decoded by the brain, which simply organizes these signals into a recognizable image. Are you with me so far? I nodded, finally starting to understand. When the retina becomes damaged, such as those who have undergone macular degeneration, those signals become warped and jumbled. Dr. Harper went on. The brain still receives them. So it's done its job. It's translating these disordered signals into an image. It kind of fills in the gaps for you. Sometimes it fills in these gaps with colours, patterns, creatures, and places that aren't present. And this is called Charles Bonnet syndrome. I nearly wept with relief. So I'm not mad, I cried. Not at all, the doctor replied. This is an entirely physical condition. Your mind is in fully working order. If you were suffering from any form of mental illness, your delusions wouldn't be limited to just the one sense. You'd hear these interlopers, smell them, even feel them. This is a condition related to your eyes, not your brain. And as I left Dr. Harper's office, I felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Sure, my vision was still an issue, but now I knew it was only a problem with my eyes and not my mind. I knew I could handle the situation. I was ready to face the world again. And since then, I've seen plenty of weird visions. I saw a huge waterfall in the park, complete with hazy mist and butterflies flitting around it. I saw a Native American warrior, complete with huge feather headdress, sitting at the stool at the counter in the coffee shop. I saw this intricate, quite impossible structure of the scaffolding crisscrossing the entire front of my apartment block. Hell, on the 4th of July last year, I saw this swooping green dragon in the sky, twisting and cavorting through the air overhead. It all looked utterly and completely real. Yet now I knew they were tricks of the eye, and they were no longer disturbing. In fact, I actually came to quite enjoy them, even looking at them as unique and entertaining. Little shows or works of art that it just existed purely for my pleasure and nobody else's. I came to welcome them. Then, a month ago, I saw her. It was nighttime. It's always nighttime when I see her, and I was just getting ready for bed. I walked into the kitchen to get myself a glass of water, and I actually cried out in alarm when I saw this figure on the corner. She was tall, by far the tallest woman I'd ever seen, and even though she stood hunched, she still had at least 6 inches on me. I was used to seeing characters in dated and bizarre dress, but this was different somehow. It didn't seem like an outfit from any one time. Instead, it was a bizarre mishmash of items. She wore a tuxedo jacket, figure-hugging and black, tailored to the female body shape, over a dirty, old, ruffled dress shirt. And to complete the ensemble, she wore this bright red bow tie. On her hands, which she held out either side as if she was shrugging, or maybe feeling for rain, she wore dirty white gloves. Her fingers were disproportionately long, almost spidery, and occasionally they twitched, as if she longed to grip and squeeze something in them. On her lower half, she wore shorts, the same crimson as her bow tie, over opaque black nylons. Her legs were long, lithe, attractive, if truth be told, like the legs of a dancer. And she also wore red heels, the same hue as her shorts and bow tie, but they sparkled and shimmered. It brought to mind Judy Garland's little ruby slippers from The Wizard of Oz. As strange as this ensemble was, I couldn't tear my eyes away from her face. Most of it was obscured by a jaunty bowler hat, tipped and tilted to hide her eyes and nose, but beneath the brim of her hat I could see deathly pale skin of her face and a grin that sent shivers down my spine. It was wide, too wide, with entirely too many teeth. A smile is meant to be this expression of warmth. It's meant to feel welcoming and benevolent, but the look on this woman's face oozed malice. It felt much like the sort of glee I'd expect from a snake as it corners a rat. However, the thing that startled me most was that she had a third arm sprouting from her back, curled up over her head like a scorpion's tail. It was longer than any arm should be, and the hand only had 3 fingers, like a claw. It was pointed straight at me, and as I swore in dismay and stumbled sideways, it seemed to track my movement. I stood staring at the creepy figure for a few seconds, trying to get my head around the situation, and she just stood there in the corner, grinning back. Finally, I realized this was just another one of my hallucinations, and I breathed an audible sigh of relief. One of the tricks I've picked up over the months of suffering from Charles Bonnet syndrome is to break the line of vision towards whichever stimulus is causing my brain to interpret the messages into the hallucination. Think of it like restarting a faulty computer, how refreshing the system kind of debugs it. To this end, I close my eyes and count to 5. Then when I open them again, the hallucination is just gone. So I stared at this horrifying, malformed figure in my kitchen, and I knew that to make it go away, I simply had to close my eyes. And I'll be honest there, I when I counted to 5, I hesitated a bit before opening. If I'd opened my eyes and she'd still been stood there, smiling that little wicked smile at me, I think I might have had a heart attack. But she wasn't. And I breathed another sigh of relief, fetched my water, and went back to bed. This tall woman haunted my thoughts in the days after I saw her. She was different from the other visions I'd had. Somehow she just felt more real, I guess. It was this agitation that my buddy Jason picked up on when we met for lunch on the following Friday. Jason was one of the same friends I tried to drive away from shortly after I lost my vision, but he refused to give up on me. He continued to get in touch week after week. Good friends are hard to come by, but great friends, the ones who will stick by your side for life, are rarer. Jason, God bless his kind heart, is one of the latter. "You've got to tell me what's going on, dude," he said as we sat down over pizza. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to brush it off. "You're so distracted. It's like you're looking for something in here all the time. You've eaten like 1 slice in the pizza in the time it's taken me to eat 4, so I repeat. You've got to tell me what's going on," Jason said, waving a slice of pizza around for emphasis. "It's nothing," I replied, feeling a little stupid. I just had a hallucination a couple nights ago that really got to me. "I thought you were cool with those now," he asked, putting the pizza slice down. "Yeah, I am. I mean, I was, but this was different," I replied, resigned to thinking about it. "She scared me." "She?" Jason asked, his interest clearly piqued. "Tell me about it." So I did. I described the tall woman and how she had appeared to me, and I explained, that unlike any of my other hallucinations, she felt more real, and that she was the first to feature such a weird and unsettling mutation. Sure, I'd seen smaller versions of people in the past, a phenomenon referred to as Lilliputian by medical professionals, but the extra appendage and impossibly distorted face were something I had yet to encounter thus far. I think it was that combined with the unnerving, expectant stance that disturbed me the most. "So," Jason said after I finished, "you say she had great legs?" "Shut up, you asshole," I laughed, throwing my napkin at him. No, seriously, I get it, man," Jason replied, passing the napkin back. "If I walked into a room and a giant mutant was waiting for me, it'd scare the shit out of me too, but you know what caused you to see this? It's like the coachman and the waterfall you saw. It's a condition that you have, and it's one that you know how to deal with. Okay?" I know, I replied. "Thanks, man, you're right." I did feel better too, so I smiled at him, took a big bite of my pizza, and changed the subject, asking him about his Psycho X, a conversation he was very happy to dive into. And the next time I saw the tall woman was just under a week later, and I was brushing my teeth. I was stood in the wash basin, brushing away, when I spotted a figure in the mirror. She was out in the dark hallway, peeking around the corner behind me. That same sinister grin I'd seen before stretched her narrow-faced into a distorted grimace. The dirty bowler hat pushed down over her eyes once again. And each of those 3 long, spidery hands gripped the doorframe. And as crazy as it sounds, it felt like she was trying to avoid being spotted. I cried out, spitting toothpaste foam all over the mirror, my toothbrush clattering into the basin, and I span around, my heart thumping in my chest, my breathing ragged in my throat. She wasn't there. Of course she wasn't. The door was empty. I tiptoed forward, hesitantly trying to look around the doorframe into the hallway without actually sticking my neck out into its shadowy confines. The seconds ticked by as I drew closer and closer, and I couldn't see anything. So finally, with a whisper of self-affirmation, I stepped out of the bathroom, and the hallway was empty, as was the rest of my apartment. I was shaken again. This was the first time I'd seen a hallucination in a reflection, and I wasn't even sure that I'd actually seen it. Now, as I sit here writing this, knowing what would follow, I think I thought like that to try and protect myself from the truth, to shield myself from it. I was an idiot. A full fortnight passed without incident. Sure, I saw a flash of colour one day, a dancing yellow light that zigzagged back and forth on the street outside my apartment, but that was the exact sort of thing I'd come to expect from my condition. It was exciting, otherworldly, but it wasn't scary like she was. In retrospect, that fortnight was blissful. It was a reminder of what life could be like. The existence that I'd carved out for myself since that diagnosis. Life was good. The night that changed the way I viewed the tall woman last night, I'd been out and had a couple drinks. I met the other guys with visual impairment for dinner, and we'd end up at a bar afterwards. I wasn't hammered, but we got through plenty of beer between us, and by the time I'd stepped out into the cool night air, I felt decidedly lighthearted. It took me a while to make it home. Laughing and talking to a couple of the other guys from the group as we strolled along, it had been a great evening. It's probably the last truly good one I'll ever have. I bid the other guys farewell and good night, and fumbling with my key, I let myself in. With swaying steps, I strolled into my hallway and hung my jacket by the door. Then I hit the light switch. She was waiting for me at the end of the hallway, all 3 hands held aloft into claws, reaching for me. that same maddening, malevolent grin on her pale face. I swore again, louder than ever, actually jumping back a step, recalling from the impossibly tall and terrifying figure lying in wait in my own home. The tall woman didn't move. She just stood there, staring and smiling at me. And I stared back, but I sure as hell didn't smile. Jesus Christ, I muttered under my breath. You know how you can feel a little paranoid after a few beers? That feeling of non-specific post-alcohol dread? Imagine that, combined with a giant, grinning mutant woman suddenly appearing in your home. Suffice it to say, it was very, very, very fucking uncool. I don't need this. I sighed, and I closed my eyes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When I opened my eyes, her face was just a foot from my own, grinning wider than ever. She dashed the length of the hallway and now stood so close that her long, grasping arms were either side of me. Her fingers twitching and clawing at the air around my face. I could see her chest heaving. As if she were actually laughing silently at my attempts to dismiss her. As if the thought that I could ever be free of her was funny. I screamed, a full-bodied shriek of terror, and I actually dropped to my knees, covering my head as if to fend off an expected blow. It never came. Finally, I lowered my hands, grasping for breath, shaking, and the hallway was empty. The tall woman was nowhere to be seen. I stood there, on my knees for a moment, gasping for breath, and then I was on my feet. I turned and ran. Out of the building and into the street. I stood there, terrified, beyond reason, without a clue as to what the hell I would do next. I finally pulled my phone from my pocket, and I made a phone call. "Hey Andy, what's up?" Jason asked. "Jason, I need you to come here," I said, sobbing. Jason didn't ask why, didn't complain. Instead, he replied, "I'm on my way." He threw his jacket around my shoulders. 20 minutes later, his car was pulled up outside, and he dashed over to the steps outside my building where I was sitting, shivering. He asked what happened, his voice filled with concern. She's in there," I stammered. "The tall woman, she's back." Okay, he said, gently helping me to my feet. "Come on, man. Let's go in there and check it out." I wish I could say that I was brave, and when we went inside, but I would be lying. I cowered behind Jason, one hand on his shoulder, as we made our way through the home. Of course, we didn't find a thing. We're talking a giant mutant woman in a pokey little one-bed apartment. Where the hell was she going to hide? Finally, after we checked every single room twice, I had to admit that she was gone. I'm so sorry, man. I apologized. I'm feeling genuinely stupid. I got scared, and I'm sorry, man. "Hey, forget about it, buddy," Jason said. "So, I'm here now. Where do you keep your booze?" And half a bottle of bourbon later, we were both feeling pretty talkative. "She's, just kind of different, I tried to explain. I get it, he said. "It's like you saw something bad and you feel bad, and that's bad." He didn't get it. No, she's different, I explained. I've never had a repeat hallucination before, and they're never scary, She's not like the others. "Dude," Jason said, taking another sip, "you've got, Charlie Bonnie syndrome, and that makes you see shit," so he waved his hands in the air like a magician who just performed a trick. I know, I replied. No, listen, Andy, he said. You know it makes you see shit. It's just your eyes, yeah? You didn't hear anything, you didn't feel anything. This is how that stuff goes. It's your eyes. And I know it's scary, man, but you've been through, like, hell and high water in your life so far. You're one toughest, bravest guys I know, and you can handle some creepy hallucination, bitch. I lied. I laughed. I couldn't help it. She is a very creepy hallucination bitch, though, dude. And he laughed, too. And we both took a drink. You know, that could help, he said, finally, his voice thoughtful. What, drinking? I asked. No. Oh, yes, it does, he giggled. I mean, like, demystifying her. Give her a name. Something stupid, so she's not scary. I've got to say, as much as I like creepy hallucination bitch, that's a bit of a mouthful, I laughed. Yeah, I get that, he replied. Suddenly something he'd said came back to me. How about Helen, I suggested. Helen Highwater. Awesome, he said, raising his glass. Here's to Helen, buddy. To Helen, I smiled and I drained my glass. Jason spent the last of the night on my sofa, mainly because he'd had too much to drink even before getting behind the wheel of the vehicle, but honestly, I think the reason that he drank so much was that he'd have an excuse to stay and keep an eye on me, and I'm glad he did. Knowing that he was there made me feel safer, and I was able to get some sleep. It gave me a sense of security to know that if the strange vision I just christened Helen was to appear again, I'd be able to call him for support. And this morning, we both needed support. It feels like a mule just kicked me in the head, he groaned, when I made my way back into the living room. Yep, I replied, my own head thumping. Joe's? Joe's, he replied firmly and staggered to his feet. As we both drank strong black coffee and ate muffins, we didn't talk much. And finally, Jason broke the silence. So, you feel cool now? He asked, his mouth still full of blueberry muffin. And I nodded. Yeah, I think so. Not still freaked out by the, you know who, he asked. Helen, I replied with a smile. No, I don't. I really don't think I am. I reckon I can handle some creepy hallucination, bitch. Good, he laughed, giving me a hearty pat on the back. That's cool, man. I bet you can. Now, as I sit here, cowering in my bathroom, too scared to go out into my apartment, I know we were both wrong. About everything. Remember how earlier I told you that the thought of being institutionalized, that the very idea of losing my grip on reality was the most terrifying thing I could imagine? Well, and now I welcome that. The alternative is far, far worse. After breakfast, I said goodbye to Jason, and he climbed into his car and drove away. The day passed without incident, and when Lewis stopped by this afternoon, she even commented on about how upbeat I seemed. You got a lady in your life? She asked, casually. And I laughed at that. Wondered what she'd think if she knew the truth. Yeah, I chuckled. Something like that. Good for you, she sniffed. You make sure you treat her right. And that tickled me even more, and I had to bite my lip. Sure, I replied. I'll do my best. Tonight, still a little wiped from the exertions of the previous evening, I decided to turn in early. I brushed my teeth, washed my hands, my face, and I got changed. And finally, I fetched a glass of water and walked into my bedroom. I climbed into bed and instantly felt so relaxed. Within mere seconds, I was nearly ready for sleep, and that overwhelming drowsiness that comes when you've spent a whole day keeping sleep at bay just kind of came, and I decided that resistance was futile. I sat up to switch off the light. I nearly didn't see her. But as I reached for the switch, I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye, and my heart leapt into my throat as I turned to the foot of my bed. The tall woman was just crouching there, her grinning face staring at me from beyond my feet. So many teeth. Her long, slender fingers were spread out over the blankets, twitching slightly as she grasped the end of the bed. Slowly, excruciatingly so, her third arm came into view over her shoulder, joining her hands on the bed. I froze, utterly petrified. I was at a crossroads here, arriving at a pivotal moment that had come from some time. This time I'd had enough. "You don't scare me anymore," I said, my voice filled with defiance and anger. "I'm not letting you do this to me." I reached across the light switch. "Good night, Helen," I said triumphantly. Then I flicked it, plunging the room into darkness. I laid there, a sense of tremendous pride surging through me, and I grinned to myself in my warm, comfortable bed, overjoyed at this emotional victory of overcoming my own fear. And then it happened. The thing that led me here. Something that turned my blood into ice water and my bowels to jelly. "Good night, Andrew," her rasping voice hissed from the darkness. That's the reaction we're going for, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, wow.
Is that fun?
Wow, that was not fun. Someone's going to come into this as a studio soon. And I was like, oh my days, it's going to be just as we get to the worst bit of this story.
Oh.
I'm not going to sleep tonight.
Sorry.
I'm going to tell Isla,
Sorry,
don't
Ed.
worry about coming back to the studio. Just don't leave me on my own, man. What?
Oh, that's such a good story.
That was crazy.
I'm very glad I found that yesterday. I was doing that whilst I was looking at the new music show, and it's just
You read it very well.
Oh, yeah.
I'm very impressed with your reading.
you gotta give it some pizzazz, some real emotional connection.
You definitely do.
Yeah. Oh well, you know what? That story took like 50 minutes, and I'm very glad that we managed to get through that, and I'm very glad that story was read. And I think on that note,
Is my reaction just?
oh yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Perfect. Right. We're gonna play some music to end the night off. Thank you everybody for having a listen to the Spook Zone.
It's definitely spooky.
We've got a couple more people coming in after this. I'm not
Got weird, fake, funny news.
Yeah.
If they remember.
hopefully they'll remember. Otherwise, it's just going to be me and Ed sitting here and
Yeah,
being
we'll trade and we'll do something that I like instead. It would
What?
just be us
Something like
watching
that.
American football highlights.
Yeah, that's
for an hour.
So we're going to play a little bit of Dos Monos to end the night. If you've never heard of Dos Monos, they're great. They're a Japanese rap outfit that make really weird, really good music. And we're going to play their newest single, Rojo. And yeah, thank you very much, everybody, for listening. And thank you all. I hope you enjoyed this special episode of the Spook Zone. It's been like a couple years again since I've done this. I want to do this more. I like reading scary stories. It's really enjoyable. And yeah. I think somebody's at the door.
It sounds like it. That was absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. Seeing it, that might be weird, fake, funny news in that note.
I hope it's weird, fake, funny news. Oh Jesus!
Actually, I'm gonna turn the lights back to something
Yeah, let's put it into
a nicer color.
We're gonna invite them in.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, there we are.
Scare them by tapping them in.
Perfect. Right. Thank you all for listening, everybody. This next track is Rojo, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your evening, ladies and gentlemen. Goodbye.